Hello, my friends. How are you doing today? This is Dr. Annette, and I am so excited to be back with you again for the third unit. Yes, that third unit in our book study, Heart. This time we're going to focus on the A, which is for alliances. We've gone through the happiness, the engagement, and now we're going to look at the alliances and why those alliances are important. Not only important for us at our school and our workplace, but also those alliances that we have outside of our workplace. But how all of these alliances are going to support our work and the work that we do with our students so that we can be the best blue ribbon teacher that we can be. All right, my friends, without further ado, let's go ahead and dig into those slides that I have prepared. All right. So here again is the title of our book, Heart. Make certain that you're on the correct book study. And then we are going into, I'm having little issues there with my cursor. So we're looking at our whole heart, okay? The happiness, the engagement, and the alliances. So finding happiness through engagement, that should make sense, in meaningful alliances, which is what we're going to focus on now, while taking focused risks using intelligent thought and wisdom. And let me move my slide over there because I had troubles with that. Okay. So if you don't already have your personal journal, you can definitely download that, and the link is provided to you in your lessons here. And then moving on, and also this is just a repeat slide. We've already discussed the energy grid, and I want you to take a look at that introduction page. At the very beginning, we had an opportunity to reflect and think about the teacher that we are, right? The teacher that we are right now, the colleagues that we have, and answer those 3 questions that are there for you to reflect upon your current season. And then as we go through all of this learning and on the entire heart, we'll be taking a look at how that is going to change over the course of the time period that you're studying. All right, so, and here we go. We're going to focus on alliances. And all 5 of these components, as you see, are so important in developing our heart print. Our essential question is, are you a person open to influence and shared values, able to become more relationally intelligent and interdependent with others? Let's read that one more time. Are you a person open to influence and shared values, able to become more relationally intelligent and interdependent with others? And that's the focus of this unit. All right, first, when we look at the alliances section, right, in these chapters 15 through 21, so in this section, we will explore an understanding of the heart print aspect of alliances. I want you to think about what that term alliance means. The nature of collaboration as a bumpy road, because we know those collaboration opportunities can be bumpy, and how to become someone others would want to collaborate with. Remember, if you also go back to what we just focused on in the engagement, there's different levels of teacher engagement. Are you that actively engaged teacher? There's different quadrants that we can draw upon. Are you in that quadrant 1? If you're in a quadrant 3, does somebody want to work with you? Probably not. So continuing on, we will also explore the benefits and cost of belonging as part of our work-life heartprint on our students and our colleagues. And as we learned in the first section, everything that we do has a positive and negative impact, right? And what we want to do is to focus on that positive. All right, so this first part here is the introduction, and this begins on page 101. And I'm going to read, as I've been customly doing, this the first section of it, and then we'll go into a little discussion. So the essential heartprint question is, are you a person open to influence and shared values, able to become more relationally intelligent and interdependent with others? And one of the Robert Greenleaf, he has a quote here. The first order of business is to build a group of people who, under the influence of the institution, right, you're a school, grow taller and become healthier, stronger, more autonomous together. Isn't that interesting? More autonomous together. So, in part 3 of this book, we will explore the role alliances play as part of our heartprint in pursuit of an effective and fully engaged professional life. Our intentional effort to effectively collaborate and engage with our colleagues and to honor the covenants and agreements of a team helps to, at best, erase causes of iniquity in our school, and at worst, allows our teaching and leading life to expand its impact and find its full and realized potential. Now, talk about benefits, right? We already kind of went through the last section in engagement, focusing on pulling out those opportunities of iniquity for our students and for our colleagues. And our goal is to lead a life to expand its impact and find that full passion that we have in our work that we do. All right, the author continues, what a payoff. You become both an iniquity eraser for your students, and you begin the journey of maximizing the greatest potential that lies within you as a teacher of others. The heartprint you leave on your students and colleagues begins by understanding the elements of happiness described in part 1, right? And discovers its personal impact in your engagement efforts revealed in part 2. My friends, the impact of your heartprint becomes magnified via the deep alliances and collaborative efforts with colleagues as described in the 7 chapters that we're going to discuss in part 3. Okay, if you looked here, the author Timothy Knoll says the impact of your heartprint becomes magnified via the deep alliances and collaborative efforts with colleagues. My friends, how does that keep you out of a quadrant 3? How does that help you erase the iniquities that may be present in your classroom as well as in your school? Okay. The author also shares with us that we are meant to be in relationships with others. It is the hard wiring of our human design, as you will discover. Now, I'm sure you already know this as an educator, because what do your students like to do? They like to come to school and see their friends. They are socializers, right? They want to be with other people. Now, our alliances with colleagues are, according to the author Robert Greenleaf, which I quoted at the beginning of our lesson today, a first order of business. And yet, there is a mystifying, counterintuitive embrace of isolation in our profession, as if it is an entitlement of our job as educators. What does the author reference there, my friends? That's right. What happens whenever we go back into our classroom? It's the classroom and the 4 walls, right? Just you and the students inside. Okay, that's what the author is talking about. It's that there is a mystifying, counterintuitive embrace of isolation in our profession. Leaders, do you collaborate with frequently, right? With other leaders? Principals, are you, besides the four walls that encompass the building, are you also collaborating with other leaders in your district or in your state, even nationwide? What organizations are you a part of? Teachers, what organizations are you a part of, right? How are you able to build those alliances? Okay, so my friends, that is what we're going to take a look at. Collaboration is an ongoing heartprint process for building the greater knowledge capacity. All right, are you ready? Okay, there's more definitely in the book, but I'm not going to read all that because I want us to be ready to move on, and I've hit some of the highlights there. All right, so let's take a look at chapter 15, which is titled The Primary Purposes of Collaboration. All right, the primary purposes of collaboration. I'm going to move my screen over just a tad. There we go. Okay, so again, and I'll start with the chapter here. So Yochai Benkler says that neuroscience shows that a reward circuit is triggered in our brains when we cooperate with one another. My friends, that reward circuit, is that going to be something that has a positive influence or a negative influence? Okay, if it's a reward, it's typically positive. Now, in the mid 1990s, we were ramping up our faculty alliances and collaborative team efforts at Stevenson and leaving the era of teacher isolation in our wake. We did not completely understand the purpose of our collaborative teams. As you can imagine, this caused a few bumps along the road. It is not like we didn't know to some extent, but we were learning on the fly. And I really appreciate how the author is sharing personal experiences that can help us to relate. I know oftentimes in my education team and in my education department, there could be differences in opinion, right? Views, different perspectives that we bring to our group. So one of the things that we do early on is to develop those team alliances, and those team alliances, or not, sorry, alliances, but agreements. So we develop those agreements on how it is that we are going to interact with each other. Okay. The author continues to say, I just did not fully understand the personal benefits. I saw collaboration by our faculty and by our students as a social justice issue for the students. It was a way to erase rigor, inconsistencies, and inequities in our students' opportunities to learn. That made sense to me. As it turns out, more than 20 years later, there is quite a bit of science that supports another and more personal reason to embrace collaboration as a professional responsibility during our careers. Not only, my friends, do we have collaboration in the classroom with teaching students how to collaborate, but also in our department meetings, in our schools, in our leadership meetings. So the professional responsibilities during our careers, okay, I'll continue. It serves our unselfish gene and our desire to collaborate with others. This might seem counterintuitive since, in many cases, your experience might be that the selfish mindset of some colleagues is a barrier to the development of meaningful collaboration with your team. Yet, evolutionary biologists and behavioral psychologists have found neural and, in some cases, genetic evidence of a predisposition to cooperate with our colleagues. And the author continues on with some additional examples. One of the things that I pulled out that I want to share with you, one of the authors asked this question: what is the primary purpose of the alliances and collaboration we are expected to engage in as part of our work at school? I want you to ponder that question. It's right here on the screen. Let me say it again. What is the primary purpose of the alliances and collaboration we are expected to engage in as part of our work at school? Okay, if you have your notebook handy, take a minute and write down some thoughts to that. And then I want you to think, do you agree with that with this? Okay. All right, let me continue on before I read anything else on that slide. The author shares that my primary purpose as a teacher is the individual and collective knowledge capacity building of my students and my colleagues towards full engagement in our work. And if you're a leader, your primary purpose could be, as a leader of a school, to have individual and collective knowledge capacity and skill sets, right? Building of the educators at your school, working towards full engagement in your work. Okay. Do you agree with that? What are your thoughts on that? Okay. The author goes on to say that your personal knowledge creation and knowledge capacity building and growth based on real-time evidence of student learning reveal the genuine purpose of participating in a collaborative and cooperative culture, forging alliances with your colleagues and coming together and learning from one another. My friends, how many opportunities do you have during the day or during the week to learn from your colleagues, to share your knowledge with those colleagues? Okay. Do you agree with the primary purposes of collaboration, right? Is to build knowledge capacity and also to build the collective work that you're doing? You know, your self-interest is best served as part of a collaborative team, right here, that serves an intrinsic greater good. So whatever your self-interest is, it is important that you celebrate that, you share that with others in your team, because someone else may be seeking that knowledge, or may have other perspectives, or other items that they can connect with it in order to become a better educator. Okay? So in a strange way, again, your self-interest is best served as part of a collaborative team that serves an intrinsic greater good. And what is that greater good, my friends? Go back to our purpose, right? It is to have that collective knowledge capacity building for you and your students and your colleagues. All right, so bridging up on this, let's take a look at the reflection questions. I want you to take a look at this on page 106 if you have your book. How do you explain to your students, colleagues, or parents why teacher collaboration time embedded into our workday is such an important part of non-professional responsibility? All right, and just a kind of a little caveat on that. Last school year, my school district actually implemented this. There have been schools, you may be at a school also where on a certain day, the kids only have a half day. The other half of the day is an opportunity for teachers to engage in some professional development or whatever it is that they're working on at that school, right? Last school year, my district, actually my superintendent implemented a district-wide. All right, so this is a district-wide, and it was just one day a week where students come in 1 hour later, okay? And he had to sell this to our community, because it really impacted many students and families as far as their work and getting the kids to school, okay? There was a bus transportation, of course, but it was an hour delayed. So there was a lot of juggling going on. The next question I want you to reflect upon: what percentage of your colleagues, whether teachers or administrators, do you believe currently view their day-to-day work as building the knowledge capacity of each other and solving work-life related problems together each and every week? And finally, how are you trying to help each colleague better understand the benefits of knowledge sharing together? Okay, that collective knowledge sharing together, my friends, is where we are moving into the next chapter, but we definitely want to show that and understand the value in this. Okay, all right, now moving on to chapter 16, PLCs. What is a PLC? A PLC is a professional learning community, and when done properly, a professional learning community, or a PLC, serves the greater good of the people. The reason why we're there is for the students. So we're going to have a bigger impact on the students. We're going to be working together in a collaborative environment. We're building those alliances. It's going to cause us to have more engagement. And then, yes, my friends, that goes right back to our passion about why we are even doing the job that we are doing in education. All right, so let's take a look. I'm going to start on page 109 if you're following along in your book. America's education system has become less a ladder of opportunity than a structure to transmit iniquity from one generation to the next. Interesting. That is from Nicholas Kristof. Well, the author says, I appreciate the words of the Pulitzer Prize winning journalist Nicholas Kristof in the opening quote that I just read. But I think he missed the mark on the last part. It is not from one generation to the next that we transmit iniquity. It is much worse. In many schools, we transmit iniquity from one classroom to the next. We do not mean to. I do not think it is intentional, as I have talked to hundreds of teachers about this issue. Transmitting iniquity from one classroom to the next is generally not something we are mindful of or think about as part of our professional heartprint development. And the author goes on to share an example. My friends, I have a few examples. As you know, in my position, let me come back to me here. In my position, I actually have the opportunity to go to several classrooms, like almost all the classrooms really, in a school. And not just one school, but I work at several schools. Okay. And I see a lot of different types of instruction. I see teachers who are newer, right? And teachers who are seasoned, and the work that they do and meeting the needs of their students is going to be different. Okay. Just because of the tool bags that a seasoned teacher has compared to a newer teacher. But one of the other things is I want you to stop and think, what is it that you are personally passionate about? I know for me, I love literacy. I love the social studies. So that is like my passion. And as an early educator, math was not my strength, right? And neither was science. And honestly, those did not become a stronger component of my portfolio until I did some additional professional development and learned more strategies and skills to provide instruction in those areas. But okay, let's go back a little bit. So as I was sharing the literacy component and the social studies component, just focusing on that literacy aspect, there are many people who feel that they are not an adequate writer, and it shows in the instruction because they choose not to provide additional learning opportunities for the students. They may love science and they may love doing some chemistry, right? And they are doing all about doing different experiments and things and getting the kids oohing and ahhing about all of that. But they're not doing anything with the writing component because they feel that they're not a strong writer. You know, whenever teachers really focus and they pillar in on things that they want to do, that is changing the learning opportunities for the students. So if you can think about teacher A, teacher B, and teacher C. Teacher A loves science. Teacher B, not so much, but loves writing. Teacher C loves to do math and social studies, okay, or whatever subject. And because they really love and focus in on those areas, they're not providing the same opportunities for students to learn all of the other areas, especially in the elementary classes, right? In the elementary classroom, because typically the teacher is teaching all of the subjects. That changes whenever you go to middle and high school, because there the teacher can pillar in on his or her focus, his or her expertise, right? As a general education teacher, you need to look at everything. My friends, back in 2000, we have the No Child Left Behind. We have, even back before that in 87, we had, Why Johnny Can't Read. We had then ESA, all those changes came along. I remember in 2000, and when I started teaching in the public school system here in Alaska, that was starting to shift, and then we started to have those standards. So we had specific standards that had to be taught at every single grade level. And I can't tell you the numerous curriculum writing teams that I've been on where we analyzed those standards and aligned it to make we aligned the curriculum with that the program with that curriculum, the standards, because we knew we needed to teach these standards. Knew we needed to teach this curriculum, and we needed to make certain that the programs that we were using were actually doing that. The lessons were actually teaching the content. So like if a principal came into the classroom, we had our standard up on the board. The principal could look around, ask students what's going on, what are they learning, and understand exactly how our lessons embedded into, there was a sequence, right? So then the lessons embed into the bigger picture of the unit, into the bigger picture of the overall curriculum. And it all goes right back to the standards. Long story short, right, is that now we actually moved even further where we have nationwide standards called the Common Core standards. And that came about, I want to say about 8 years ago, right about that time frame. But some states did not follow along, and it's probably a little before the 8 years, maybe 10 or 12 years ago. But some states thought that some of those standards were too lenient. And so then they developed what they called their specific state standards. I know in Alaska, we have the Alaska state standards, which are supposed to be about 7 to 8% more rigorous than the Common Core standards. Okay. Anyways, all this came out. The Common Core standards came out. Parents were frustrated with it because they didn't understand everything. They say like this new math and teaching has really changed. But what we do know is that now every single teacher was accountable to teaching the specific standards. They could teach it however they wanted to, right? But they had to make certain that those standards were taught, and not once, several times, so that students can demonstrate proficiency. Okay, so now fast forward along until just this past year. So that was one of the things that my district was doing. They realized that in Class A, this teacher has this specific grading criteria, and they teach these specific standards. In Class B is something totally different. So this past year, my district embarked on what they are calling a PLC, team time. And so they're starting this PLC community, this professional learning community. Kind of got off on a shaky start, but I think it's going to get better whenever educators and leaders can realize the value. It's something new, it's change, and it's a struggle, right? But whenever they start to see the value in it, then it's going to be a good thing. So the reason that we want to make certain that where every single teacher is teaching to the standards is because we want to graduate students who have a solid foundation and the knowledge that they need to continue on into the careers that they would like to pursue. So, okay, let me go back to the slides here now, and let's continue on. So here we can see that the PLC culture is an ongoing process in which educators work collaboratively in recurring cycles of collective inquiry and action research. And I really want to highlight that action research, that collective inquiry and action research, with the goal to achieve better results for the students they serve. Professional learning communities operate under the assumption that the key to improved learning for students is continuous job-embedded learning for educators. And there's the source. And what is it that we are constantly doing? We are constantly reflecting. So we're doing the lesson. We're looking at reflecting upon, what worked well, what didn't work well, which student, what population do I need to continue to work with. What do I need? What kind of lesson do I need to reach those students? And it's just rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. The beauty of a professional learning community is an opportunity to come together and to start to analyze, the work that is happening in the classroom. And how do you analyze? You look at student data, right? So one of the things that in my district, we just kind of went through this first year as a little bumpy year, but we went through the year looking at our standards and ensuring that we understand as a third grade teacher, what are the standards in K1, 2, 3, we all know 3, 4, and 5, right? So we were looking at all those standards and to see how they align vertically. Knowing that when my students come to me, these are the expectations that this prior teacher taught, all these standards, specific standards, so that way I'm ready to start the school year out running with the content that they need. Okay. This is so important, especially because of the past several years, we've had issues with COVID, schools were shut down. Then we had a partial year with COVID. And then last year, and I think, was last year the third year? I'm trying to think if last year was the third year or the fourth year, but I feel like we're finally out of that now. And now we need to make certain that those students who experienced opportunities where they were not in school or learning due to illnesses or due to the COVID situation, that they are getting the instruction that they need to help them move further along. Okay. So now that all the teachers know the standards, this next year, in my little crystal ball I have, right? What I see coming next is the opportunity for now to take a look at the data, right? And then bring that data together, to bring that back to the data together on a weekly basis to examine, to analyze that. If teacher A is doing a bang up job, right, with the math standard, and teacher B is like, gosh, what are you doing? My students are not doing as well in that standard as your students. What are you doing? Then that's where there can be some of that collaboration. Well, have you tried this? Have you tried that? Okay, so that would be very helpful. The next piece, which is even more exciting, is we'll continue to get onto this, but I'll share a little secret. The next piece is now that everybody knows about the standards, right? Everybody knows the expectation. Then you're bringing that data and you're looking at it, you're examining it, you're asking questions of each other. What is it that you're doing that supported your students? What can I do? How can I help? Can you help me with my students? Well, the next piece, which is further on in our studies, but it fits so well here, is then you get to have observations, right? If teacher A is doing a bang up job, teacher B needs some help. Teacher B should have some time to go and observe teacher A to see what that teacher's doing so that teacher B can then work on that skill in his or her classroom. Okay. I don't know if you've ever been involved in what we call a glass bowl, right? Or a fish bowl, but it's an opportunity for teachers to go in and to just sit in the background and to watch to see what's going on, and then afterwards have some debrief time. Okay, some debrief time with the person who is providing that instruction. You know, as a mentor and a mentee, this is fabulous. This is a great opportunity. But in the PLC community and structuring the steps in this way, can you imagine the impact, that knowledge capacity that's going to be built for you as the educator, as the leader, and for those students? It's phenomenal, mind-blowing, right? Okay, so that's just a little sneak peek into what's coming up with all this. But I wanted you to get that whole picture there. Okay, let's move on. And here we go. So PLCs are, hey, we know that PLCs is a process. Okay, it's there is no end to that process. It's constantly going. Now, according to All Things PLC, which I shared the website there, it's allthingsplc.info, okay? The PLC, listen to this. The PLC culture is an ongoing process in which educators work collaboratively in recurring cycles of collective inquiry and action research to achieve better results for the students they serve. Professional learning communities operate under the assumption that the key to improved learning for students is continuous job-embedded learning for educators. Let's break that down. Okay, here on the screen, I want you to look at this. Educators work collaboratively. What does that mean? Right? I got it. We are not working alone. We are working together. We are building those alliances. We're working together. There is no isolation. It's obsolete. The next one, number 2, educators work collaboratively in recurring cycles. How often? In my district, we meet once a week as a school. Every single school in the district meets, at the specific time. But then we also, teacher teams meet throughout the week. Okay. So are you doing it? Also, are you doing this just before a unit or after a unit? Okay. How often? It's important that it's a recurring cycle, and it is important. It is a priority. So there is no canceling. Okay. All right, so let's continue. So we're breaking this down. We're diving down. So educators work collaboratively in recurring cycles of collective inquiry. Do you think our strategies will work? What are you doing? How can I do that? Let's try this. This right here is, my friends, is that action research. Trying something, keeping, get your variables there, right? Make sure you know what you're doing, and tweaking it to see if you get your results. If it's not what you want, tweak something and then continue on. The goal is to achieve better results. Is there evidence of learning in the classroom? Who are you serving? The students, your colleagues. Okay, are you teaching and leading others? And then it's job embedded adult learning that impacts student learning. The end. Okay, so let's take a look. PLCs serving the greater good. It's educators worked collaboratively in recurring cycles of collective inquiry to achieve better student results to serve job embedded adult learning that impacts student learning. So each one of those components is something very specific. And I hope that you're able to see that as well. All right, let's move on to that next slide. And here when you are working in your professional learning community, there are 4 questions, my friends, that I want you to really think about. Okay. Now, these 4 questions, let me come back to me. These 4 questions are not going to be just in conversation when you meet, but these 4 questions are so important that you need to plan each of your lessons with these 4 questions as you know you're thinking. How are you planning to, what is it that you need to do, how are you going to deliver it? If students get stuck, what are you going to do? That's that reflective part. And then when students get it, what are you going to do next? One of the really sweet things is if you're a leader, even if you're a teacher, right, and your students are doing some work, ask the student, what are you learning today? Why is this important for you to know? How will you know if you learned this, student Sally? How will you know that you learned this material, Sally? Okay. And when those students are able to articulate what it is that they're learning, why it's important, right? That meaningful connection, that purpose. And then how will they know? How will the student know if he or she has learned a material? And then the next part is, as an educator, what are we doing next? Okay. So these 4 questions are so, so important. Let's come back to them. Write these questions down. What do we want all students to know and be able to do? How will we know if they know it? How will we respond if they don't know it? And how will we respond if they do know it? So I want you to think about this as these 4 questions. I'd write them down. I'd stick it on a Post-it note, put it on my computer, make a sign, whatever it is that you want, okay? But let's break this down a little bit. What do we want all students to know and be able to do? Those are those essential learning standards. Those are the tasks. Those are those projects, okay? Everything goes back to that overall curriculum that you have, which is built on the standards. And then what program are you using to reach those standards, that curriculum? Number 2, how will you know if they know it? What are you using? Are you using assessment instruments? Are you using specific tasks? Are you using anecdotal notes? Are you using projects? How will you know? How do the kids know? Okay, this is the great opportunity to teach the students, like, if you use standardized report cards or standardized grading, a 1, 2, 3, 4. Even if you use an ABC grading, you can still use a rubric for students to assess their own learning. And when students are assessing their own learning, then they are starting to develop that ownership of their learning. The next question is, how will we respond if they don't know it? Okay, so do you give some formative feedback? Do you wait till the very end of the unit to give feedback, or are you giving feedback all along, that formative feedback? And action processes, are they established? What is it that you're going to do? Lots of the schools have what's called the MTSS, or the multi-tiered systems of support. So there's a tier 1, everybody's receiving all of the content in the classroom. That's through a guaranteed and viable program that's aligned to the curriculum, the district's, the state standards, right? And then if 80% of the students, they should be perfect for that, right? And then there's going to be about another 15% that might need a little bit of extra support, okay? That extra support is what we call that tier 2. And then, so they're going to get that extra support. Typically in a classroom, whenever you do a workshop or you do a center time, that's a perfect opportunity to provide that tier 2 support. Students are working on specific skills at the different centers, and then the teacher runs a group. And when a teacher runs a group, that is an opportunity to do small group tier 2 support. Okay, if you think about a class of 25, 30 students, only about 15% of those students, okay, are in a tier 2. Now you heard me say 80%, then we have the 15. What about those other 5? That other 5%, which is like 1, maybe 2 students, is the tier 3. And those students get an additional layer of support. So everybody gets tier 1. Tier 2 students get tier 1 and tier 2. Tier 3 students get tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. It's an additional layer of support. Okay. All right. So that's, what do we do if they don't respond to that instruction? Let's go back to the questions. And then that fourth question is, well, how will we respond if they do know it? So if the students do know, this is where you are differentiating instruction. In that center time, you can work with students who achieve that standard, who know what they're doing, and push them on, or provide learning in another way that meets a standard that perhaps is at we were talking about 3rd grade, so maybe it's at a 4th grade level. It's introducing them to that higher level. Okay. But it's very important that as the educator and as a leader, right? As a leader, this is so key. What do we want all students to know and be able to do? How will we know if they know it? How will we respond if they don't know it? And how will we respond if they do know it? Okay, those are critical questions to know and the answers to. Okay. And finally, let's take a look at some reflection. We're come to the end of this chapter. So I want you to think, do a team collaboration check. Are you working as a team? I want you to think right now on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 not very collaborative and 10 totally collaborative. When you're thinking about a PLC, give your team a score, 1 to 10, and then answer this question. Why didn't you pick a lower collaboration number for your team or teams? And I want you to think, why didn't you pick a higher collaboration number for your team or your teams? Okay. And that's really going to get you to focus in on what you need to do to become better as a collaborative team, which goes to the next question. What steps can you take to become more aware of the routine practices of other teachers on your team and erase any inequities, even if unintentional? Okay. When we go back to the example of teacher A, teacher B, teacher C, that is an example of unintentional iniquities. What we want to do is to erase those iniquities intentionally so that every teacher has the knowledge capacity to be that blue ribbon teacher. Okay? All right, my friends, that is going to wrap us up for today. My goodness, what a day. I hope that you're able to walk away with a better understanding of the importance of the collaboration, PLCs, starting those alliances, and how this is really going to support the others, the engagement and the happiness, and really push that knowledge capacity on our educators and on students. And the end result is increased learning and achievement. And I can tell you that when everyone is working in concert, right, we're all playing our instruments, we're all playing on the same sheet of music, that learning is going to excel. It's going to actually accelerate whenever you are working together with those strong alliances. All right, my friends, that's all I have for you today. Join me next time as we continue to dive into more information about alliances and developing that heart print that we have in our hearts that we want to leave with all those students, all those teachers, all those people that we meet with every single day. Until next time, my friends, have a blessed day. Bye-bye.